What happens when retirement planning is restricted by fear? Why does dreaming about retirement sometimes feel naive or even irresponsible? How can we design retirement in a way that feels expansive instead of defensive? If you've ever felt tension between being responsible and being hopeful, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just feeling the friction between two forces that rarely get integrated. In today's video, we're going to talk about the difference between dreaming and planning, why you need both, and how to bring them together without tipping into fantasy or fear. As you think about retirement, you probably lean hard in one direction. Either you focus almost entirely on the numbers, save more, invest wisely, reduce risk, protect what you have, or you drift toward possibility, imagining, travel, purpose, freedom, reinvention. But most of us struggle to hold both at the same time. So you end up in one of two places: planning defensively, cutting, shrinking, bracing, or dreaming abstractly, imagining a version of retirement that feels good, but disconnected from reality. And neither one creates confidence. Here's the shift. Retirement isn't just a math problem, and it's not just a vision board. It's a design problem with financial levers, and design requires both imagination and structure. Dreaming without planning creates fantasy. Planning without dreaming creates scarcity. Confidence comes from marrying the two. In this video, I'm going to show you why fear-based retirement planning quietly shrinks your future, why dreaming often feels uncomfortable for high achievers, and a simple 3-step process to design retirement from clarity, not anxiety. So instead of asking, how do I protect myself from everything that could go wrong, you can start asking, what am I building and how do I make it possible? I'm Tanya Finks, not a financial advisor, just someone like you who is 5 to 10 years from retirement, who refuses to build the next chapter from fear. After years coaching people through major transitions and years inside complex corporate systems, building structure where there wasn't any, I've learned something simple. Clarity leads to confidence. And clarity doesn't come from shrinking your dreams. It comes from defining them and then planning them well. If you're part of the pre-retirement posse, welcome back. So let's start here. What actually happens when retirement planning is driven primarily by fear? Once you see how subtle and common fear-based planning really is, you'll understand why so many capable people feel responsible but not excited. When retirement planning is restricted by fear, something subtle happens. You stop designing a future. You start defending against catastrophe. Fear-based planning sounds responsible on the surface. It says things like, I can't afford to make a mistake. What if I run out of money? What if healthcare costs explode? What if the market crashes at the wrong time? Those are real concerns, but when fear drives the entire conversation, it narrows your thinking. And here's what fear does neurologically. It shifts your brain into protection mode. When that happens, creativity drops, flexibility shrinks, possibility feels dangerous. You stop asking, what would I love, and start asking, what could go wrong? Let me know in the comments if that sounds like you. Now, planning for risk is wise, but planning only for risk creates a life that feels smaller before it even begins. You begin to design retirement like a bunker instead of a landscape. And that's where many capable, responsible people get stuck. They've done everything right. They've saved, they've planned, they've reduced risk, and yet retirement still feels tight, restricted, fragile. Not because the numbers are wrong, but because fear has been in charge of the design. And here's the deeper issue. If fear defines the frame, you'll always feel like you're one bad decision away from collapse. That doesn't create confidence. It creates vigilance. So the real question becomes, if fear isn't supposed to run the process, what should? And before we answer that, we need to look at the other extreme, because some people swing just as hard in the opposite direction. Now let's look at the other extreme, because if fear-driven planning shrinks your future, fantasy-driven dreaming detaches from it. This is the version of retirement thinking that says, I'll figure it out later. I just want to travel. I've worked hard. I deserve to enjoy it. The numbers will sort themselves out. And listen, there is nothing wrong with dreaming. In fact, Dreaming is essential, but when dreaming floats free from reality, it becomes a vibe, not a plan. Fantasy-driven dreaming often shows up as vague visions, Pinterest boards, conversations about places you might move, a general sense of someday it'll all work out. Let me know in the comments if that sounds like you. And here's what's happening psychologically. When you've spent decades being responsible, dreaming can feel like relief. It feels expansive. It feels lighter. It feels like finally exhaling. But if you never connect that dream to structure, it can quietly create its own anxiety. Because underneath the fantasy, there's a question you're not answering. How will this actually work? And if that question goes unanswered, your nervous system never fully relaxes. So instead of fear, you get avoidance. Instead of vigilance, you get vagueness. And neither one creates confidence. Fear makes you rigid. Fantasy makes you untethered. And here's the truth most people miss. Retirement design requires both imagination and structure. Not one, not the other, both. If you only plan, your future feels small. If you only dream, your future feels unstable. The goal isn't to choose a side. The goal is integration. And that's where we're headed next. Because once you understand how to let dreaming and planning work together, retirement stops feeling defensive and starts feeling intentional. Before we go further, let me say this. As usual, I have free resources for planning for retirement holistically linked in the description to help you think through factors that help you thrive in retirement. And if you're looking for a more structured way to bring vision and planning together, Dream is opening soon. Dream stands for Designing Retirement with Energy, Alignment, Meaning, and Momentum. Dream helps you prepare to retire on your own terms with clarity and confidence in just 20 minutes a day. It's the framework I use to guide this exact integration: vision, numbers, health, independence, relationships, purpose, all in one place. If that feels aligned, you can join the waitlist below and I'll share details when we launch. Now, let's talk about how to actually do this, because retirement isn't just a math problem, it's a design problem with financial levers. And design requires both imagination and structure. Here's how we bring them together. Step 1 is to dream without editing. Most people never actually let themselves do this. They edit before they imagine. They limit before they explore. So start here. Dream a day, a week, a month, a year. What does a really good Tuesday look like? Not a vacation, not fantasy, just a Tuesday that feels aligned. Where are you? Who's with you? How do you feel in your body? What fills your time? What doesn't? What pace are you living at? And here's the key. Don't ask, can I afford it yet? This is not about feasibility. This is about awareness. You cannot plan for a life you haven't named. Step 2 is to plan for possibility. Now we bring structure in, but not as a restriction, as a tool. Ask, what would that life cost? What are the fixed pieces? What are the flexible ones? What levers exist? Timeline, location, spending rhythm, freedom work, Social Security timing, housing decisions. Instead of asking, can I afford this exact dream? Ask, how could I design toward this? Maybe the dream stays intact. Maybe it evolves. Maybe it becomes more creative than you imagined. Planning doesn't shrink the dream, it shapes it. Step 3 is to adjust with clarity. This is where fear usually rushes back in because numbers feel final. But numbers aren't verdicts, they're feedback. You look for, where do the numbers align naturally? Where do you have flexibility? Where is there opportunity for creativity? Where are trade-offs acceptable? Where are they not? Clarity asks, what do I want and how do I plan to make it happen? And here's the breakthrough. When you integrate dreaming and planning, you don't feel reckless, you don't feel restricted, you feel grounded. Because now your retirement isn't defensive, it's intentional. Let me state that differently. You don't need to shrink your vision to feel responsible, and you don't need to abandon structure to feel expansive. You need both. And when these two work together, confidence replaces fear. I'm naturally someone who dreams big and then immediately wants to build structure to support it. And I've learned that when those two instincts are working together, I feel calm. I'm in my happy, inspired place. When one overrides the other, I feel tension. That's true in my career, it's true in my life, and it's absolutely true in my retirement planning. Let me give you a picture. Planning retirement without dreaming is like getting in your car and turning on the GPS without choosing a destination. You can optimize the route all day long, avoid tolls, avoid traffic, compare the different highways. But if you don't know where you're going, efficiency doesn't mean anything. You're just driving very responsibly in a direction you never consciously chose. And dreaming without planning, that's typing in a destination and refusing to look at the map. You know where you want to go, you feel inspired, but you ignore the distance, the fuel, the terrain, the construction zones. You assume the road will just unfold, and sometimes it does, but sometimes it takes you much longer to get where you're ultimately going. The people who feel most confident in retirement aren't the ones with the most perfect projections. They're the ones who know two things: where they're headed, what roads are available. And here's the beautiful part. A GPS doesn't panic when you take a wrong turn. It recalculates. It doesn't shame you. It doesn't declare the trip a failure. It simply adjusts the route based on where you actually are. That's what expansive retirement planning looks like. You set a destination, you understand your map, and when life changes, health shifts, markets move, timelines evolve, you recalculate. Not reactively, intentionally. Fear-based planning is like staring at the fuel gauge the entire drive. Fantasy-based dreaming is like refusing to check it at all. Expansive design, it's knowing your destination, understanding your resources, and trusting that you can adjust along the way. And when you approach retirement this way, something powerful happens. The pressure eases because you're no longer trying to guarantee perfection. You're navigating with awareness. And that's what confidence actually is, not certainty, orientation. Here's what I want you to remember. Retirement is not a threat to defend against. It's a chapter to design. And if your planning has felt tight or heavy or driven by quiet fear, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means you might be planning without dreaming, or dreaming without planning, and you need both. Dreaming gives you direction. Planning gives you structure. Clarity brings the two together, and clarity, not certainty, is what builds confidence. Right now, you still have time to imagine more, time to adjust the math, time to make intentional decisions instead of reactive ones, time to build a retirement that feels aligned, not accidental. As usual, I have free holistic retirement planning resources linked in the description if you want structured reflection tools to help you think this through. And if you're ready for a deeper, guided approach, Dream is opening soon. Dream is where we bring all of this together, your dreams, your numbers, your health, your identity, your relationships, into one integrated design process. The waitlist is open now. If this philosophy resonates with you, you can use the link in the description to get on that list and be the first to hear about launch details and special pricing. Because the goal isn't to retire safely, it's to retire well. Thanks for being here, Posse. And remember, the best chapter of your life isn't the one you survived, it's the one you design.